Good morning folks, it's Gordon here at Avolites. I'm going to talk through some of the basics about recording timecode into queue lists. I've got 10 queue lists here, so hopefully I should be able to go through a couple of different things that you need to know and a couple of different pitfalls that some people find in. Hello to Bobby and Diego and Nick who are already commenting. If you've got any questions, post them on this video and I shall try my best to answer all of them for you. I've got a queue stack programmed onto here, so when I press go, it's going to go through the number of different queues that I have recorded. All nice and good, but if I want to work with timecode, there is a fairly easy, simple step process that you can work through to make sure that you're recording your timecode just in this queue list that you want to work with, and that your times are nice and effective. I'm going to release everything and start from scratch. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this soft key E on my console of timecode. I need to make sure that when I'm working with timecode on my console, this timer is enabled. This is the timer across the entire console. There are 5 different kinds of timecode that Titan can work with. There is internal timecode, there is MIDI timecode, there is Winamp timecode, there is clock, and there's SMPTE. There's a number of different videos online, especially on YouTube, going into more detail about all these different kinds of timecode, but I can accept a MIDI timecode source. It's quite common in theatre, it's quite common in a few other things. Winamp is actually built inside the console, so you can use the console as an MP3 player and direct MIDI information straight from that. The working with the clock is the time that is on either the console or the computer that you're working with. So you can see if I select clock there, it's exactly 15:03 according to my laptop, which sounds about right, as I am currently sat live in London. If anyone has any questions, then drop me a message on this video and I will try and answer them. For this example, I am going to work with the internal time code. This is just so that you can see me pause, play and restart it. Working down my soft keys, the next thing I can do is have a look at the connected queue lists, because we can have many different queue lists doing many different things. Some of them can be connected to timecode information and some of them can be left out of timecode information. So queue list 13 is the one that I'm going to play with just now. So I'm going to tap that soft key D of connected queue lists, and I can either tap this button or I can scroll through here and find what queue list I'd like to connect. When I see that highlighted, I'm nice and happy. So I can tap exit to go back in that menu one step. The next option I have is record. If I tap this, the console is going to record the timecode, which is being displayed at the top of the screen every time I press go. That time is not going up at the moment because I'm using the internal timecode. I'll need to press play. You can see that going up and you can see the record message at the top of the screen. Now I can tap go and I can fire through the various steps in my queue list depending on that exact moment that I want this queue to fire. It's not the most beautiful show in the world, but hopefully you guys get the idea. Lovely. If at any point you're recording timecode and you need to pause the timer for any reason, you can see it's still recording, you can see it's still in that queue. So I can pause it, go and check, see if there's a problem, rewind the track, whatever I need to do, come back and play it and carry on recording my timecode information. As soon as I'm done, I can pause that timer and I can go back in that soft key menu and stop recording. Normally the point where on site I'll check everyone's happy, check to see if there's any niggles and amend them, and then I'm going to release that playback just so that I know I'm starting it entirely from scratch. Getting lots of thumbs up on the messages, I like it. It's always encouraging to see. If you've got any questions as I go along, let me know. If I tap that timecode button on my first set of soft keys, my program menu, I can see my timer is still enabled. So if I reset, I can see in this cue list I've got some timecode information recorded. It's that easy. In some consoles on the market, and certainly many years ago, you had to enter each hour in 2 digits, each minute in 2 digits, each second in 2 digits, and each millisecond in 3 digits. This is a lot nicer and a lot smoother. Now if I play this timecode, I will be able to see these tracks fire based on what individual time. See, as soon as that hit 7 seconds, that first cue fired. As soon as it hit 10 seconds, that next cue did. Not every cue in your cue list has to be connected to timecode information. You can see this one is disabled. So that is going to wait for me to press go on the console. It doesn't have to be an absolute over the entire cue list. You can see that all the rest of the cues in this cue list I haven't recorded timecode values for. So they're just going to sit there and wait for me to press go afterwards. Hello Lars, how's it going? As soon as that last timecode value that I've recorded in there goes, this timer is going to carry on counting up, and I can then continue to press go as much or as little as I like to finish that show. If I pause and reset, what's happened is this timer now has a 00000 set of information, so it's not going to display any cues. As soon as I press play, you'll see that information start clocking up as soon as it reaches that magical first time that I press go. These values are changeable afterwards, they're not set in stone. Timecode, oh good question, why is the timecode timer displaying in milliseconds instead of frames? I believe that is partly because I'm using the internal clock and partly because of the way that we have set it up inside Titan, but I shall ask about that later on. That's a good question that I haven't thought of before. If I select one or any number of these values and have a look at my soft keys, I can offset this time, I can add a particular amount of seconds, or subtract a particular amount of seconds if I wish. If ever I need to disable these cues from listening to timecode information, then I can press timecode cue and you can see it says disabled there. I haven't deleted those values, I've just disabled those cues from listening to timecode. I'll tackle it again from scratch. One second. I'm going to use this next cue list that I have on my console for this example, but I shall show it on screen this time. When you program and work with your cue lists, by default, the timecode column in them will be disabled. This is a lot of information to display on screen. Quite often when I'm recording timecode values, I will create a filter on the left hand side that just shows me the cue name and the timecode information. Those of you who aren't familiar with recording filters, view filters, I shall go through that process as it may be useful to you guys. In the context menu, this space on your console, but on this Titan 1 interface it's up here, I can tap edit columns. This is going to display the title of every single column on the soft keys, and I can go through and remove any ones that I do not want to see. That should do me quite nicely. Now if I want to record this filter, I can tap record and tap on that left hand side. No problem, Filippo. I shall definitely find out. If I don't remember in the next couple of days, drop me an email, gordon@avolites.com, and I shall ask the software team. Now this is a standard recorded cue list. As it is, you can see I've got some shapes in here, I've got some different fade times in here as well, so as you would do in the real life. I'm going to select this entire timecode column, and I'm going to say that I want all of these cues to listen to timecode values. So I'm going to tap that soft key F of timecode cue enabled. When I've done this, all of the cues will display 0.00 values. That's because they haven't got any timecode information in them just yet. I can still fire and operate this cue list as normal. Always a happy place to be. If I want this Q1 to stay having a 0.00 value, that's not a problem at all as well. As soon as I've done this on my cue list, I can tap soft key E of timecode, and I can start working my way down the soft keys. Timecode 1 is great for now. We can deal with 4 different lots of timecode in the console as well. So you could have timecode 1 being internal, timecode 2 being external, timecode 3 being clock, etc, etc. As soon as I'm happy and ready to record timecode values, I can tap this soft key C, which is the timer over the entire console, and enable it. I'm then going to have a look at the cue lists that I have connected to this particular timer. So you can see at the moment, as I was playing with it earlier, that cue list on playback 10 is currently connected. I don't want that one anymore. I want this one that I have on playback 9. As soon as you do that, as the internal timecode has got a 0.00 value, all the cues are quite rightly going to fire. Now, carrying on working down my soft keys, I'm going to tap that soft key E of record. There's going to be nothing else happen up until I start this timer by pressing play. I can now go through my cue list, and you can see every time I'm pressing go, it is recording those timecode values in there for me. If you've got any fade in or fade out times over your cues within your cue list, they're still going to apply. Timecode is just going to send the go command and let the console do the rest of the work. Now across this cue list, I have got timecode values in every single cue. So I'm going to press pause and reset. Now, after you've recorded your timecode within your cue list, I highly recommend that you release and refire it. Just a good force habit to be in. You know that any LTP values that you've got coming out the console are going to stop, and you can start safely from scratch. You can see that at the moment my timer has a timestamp of 00000, which is why it is already sat inside Q1. This is because I have the timer enabled. As soon as I'm happy, I can press play, and as these relevant amount of seconds come up, that is going to record timecode values in there. Say cues 9 and 10, I actually don't want to listen to timecode information. I can select those 2 cells and choose this soft key F of timecode cue disabled. Now it's going to sit in Q8 up until that value of 14 seconds fires. Then it's going to fire that Q11 for me. So it's quite nice for guitar solos and additional punches at the end. You don't have to have a completely separate cue list with them. You can have them all built into one. What I've seen quite a lot of people doing in the industry is they will have different songs at different start times. If I wanted to record values into this cue list but all starting from an hour, what I could do is I could put in a particular start time. So now you can see that my start time is always going to be an hour. Now if I record and play that information, I'm following the same process. I haven't disconnected anything, I haven't released anything, but you can see all these new values that I'm recording into my cue list have a start time of an hour. Let's answer some questions as I can see them mounting up. What happens if you lose external timecode while it's running live? From Steve. The console will not fire any additional cues. It will not reset or locate or drop anything to black, so that you should be in a safe position. If you ever do get any timecode glitches while you're operating a show, remember that soft key E on your program menu, and you can very quickly disable your timecode and take over control. How about put in a chase in the queue list for timecode record? If it's inside a queue within a queue list, then it will fire absolutely fine up until the next piece timestamp goes where it needs to fire another queue. How do you go back to play a previous queue once passed through the timecode during live? You can still manipulate the queues and go previous step and forward step as much as you like, but as soon as that next timecode value has fired, what it's going to do is it's going to fire that next queue for you. If you wanted to take over control of your queue list during the show, then timecode and disable your timer so that you can control it yourself. Perfect, great, that's what I like to hear. Hopefully I'm explaining it in a nice, calm and cool and useful way. For those of you who've just joined me, I shall tackle recording the basics of timecode from scratch once more. I'll use this particular cue list now, just so that you guys can see me connect to it and all that kind of jazz. Put my start time back to 0. Lovely. So for those of you who just joined me, I'm using timecode, the internal timecode in the console, as an example. You can accept 5 different kinds of timecode information, be they MIDI, Winamp, clock, SMPTE. I always get that wrong, I don't know why. Hi Nicholas, how's it going? Internal timecode, happy dates. I'm then going to enable the timer on my console. This is so that the console is listening to particular time information. This cue list 10 is the one I'm currently using, so I'm going to have a look at it, and you can see in this cue list column, same as if I'd recorded it entirely from scratch, timecode cells currently say disabled. This is version 11.1, Adrian. It's the one that got released last week and is available for download on the Avolites website. As soon as I select a few or all of these cells in the timecode column of my cue list view, I can tap soft key F to enable timecode. Now I can carry on after pressing exit, going down these soft keys one by one. Connected cue list. At the moment, you can see I've got a cue list on playback 9 connected. I don't want that. You can record timecode into multiple cue lists at once by having multiple cue lists connected to timecode in this soft key. I want this one, and you can see that as soon as I connected that cue list, as I've got my timer enabled, all these queues with 0 seconds fired. Now I want to record some timecode information into this queue list, so I'm going to tap record. As soon as I'm happy and I've checked everything's good to go, I can press play. This timecode value is starting to mount up. Operating your queue list as normally as you would in the show. Anytime I press the go button, it's going to create a timestamp and put that time information into my queue list. Lovely. As soon as I'm done, I can pause that timer as I'm done with it. I can press record, which is going to stop me recording. Now I'm in a good happy place to have a look and see what my timecode information looks like. Because I'm using internal timecode, I can press reset, play and pause on the console itself. If you're using an external timecode source, you will not have this play, pause and reset button on your consoles. You will have them on the timecode source itself. Final step before I forget and somebody ends up reminding me is I'm going to release and refire this queue list just so that I know I'm starting absolutely from scratch. As I've got my timer enabled and it's currently saying 0 seconds, this Q1 is showing 0 seconds, which is why it's fired already. So my timer's enabled, I've recorded some, I'm then going to go to the next page, press play, and I'm going to see my queues fire. There you go, it's already fired on to the next one, and it's going to carry on working its way through. Timecode can be used in so many different things. I've used it in corporate shows where all of my lights have been programmed to go to a particular sting. I've used them for bands that are working on click track. I have used them for countless amounts of things, but it came up on the Facebook group that people wanted to know more about recording timecode, which is why this webinar is happening. I'll put up a vote on the Avolites programmers and operators Facebook group fairly shortly about what you guys would like the next webinar to be about. You can see that my timecode is now well over the last value inside this queue list. It's going to carry on firing up until I press pause and I press reset. Now you can see that timecode information has a 0 second and this Q1 has a 0 second, which is why it's fired. Hopefully this is making sense to you guys. If you have any last questions, then feel free to drop a comment in this video. Otherwise I shall wrap it up in about 5-10 minutes time after I have gone through the entire process from scratch once more. Mohammed, I am currently using version 11 of 11.1 on this particular laptop. I hope that helps. Let me just reset my console so I'm starting it entirely from scratch. Lovely. Right, on this particular playback, same as these other ones that I've been through so far, I have a queue list. You can see every time I press go, I've got a few different weird and wonderful lighting states programmed in there. If I have a look in the queue list view, I've made a filter so that rather than all of this information showing and me having to scroll to the right hand side, I've just got that timecode information in there. Dan's just sent me a message. Are you able to record bumps and other playbacks into a time-coded show, i.e. mode 2 faders? Yes, totally. You could load them, auto-load them into any particular queue. You also don't have to have every queue listening to timecode information. So I'm sure I've done it before at a gig where the start of each song was time-coded and the middle 8 of each song was time-coded, but I had 10, 15 queues in between each of these where I could press go as and when I felt the moment. But of course, as soon as the timecode got onto that next section, it was definitely going to fire that queue for me. I'll give an example for that during this session. This timecode column in queue list, I'm going to use soft key F to enable timecode information for this particular queue list. That's the word. Now I'm going to have a look at the soft key E on my normal program menu. Currently soft key C says timer disabled. I'm going to go through and I'm going to check I'm happy with everything else. Timecode 1, that's fine. I'm only dealing with one timecode in this particular show. And I'm going to use internal timecode so that you guys can see me press play, pause, etc, etc. But if you want to choose a different kind of timecode, tap on this soft key and choose from the options below. SMPTE ports are on most of the consoles, so if you're using that kind of timecode signal, you can plug it in and you can fire the signal nice and easily. Steve has just sent me a question saying, I assume timecode list can fire another list and actions as well. Yes, it totally can do. You can deal with 4 different kinds of timecode and you can have it connected to 10, 15, 20 different things if you'd like. Now you can see that my queue list is ready to work for me. I'm going to carry on working through my soft keys. Timer enabled, that is good for me. Now my console is going to listen to timecode information. Soft key D is then going to allow me to connect one or multiple queue lists to this timer. I want to connect this queue list, so you can either select it on the soft keys or you can tap the blue swap button of it. All of my queues just fired because I had enabled my timer and it's got a 0.00 second value in there. If you don't want all of your queues to fire, then don't enable your timer before you have connected your queue list. I'm now going to tap record. So I now know that every time I press go, it's going to record a timestamp in the particular queue that I'm in. Even if I wanted to start from Q5, I could say connect Q5, enter. Now, as soon as I press play, this internal timer is going to start counting up. And as soon as I press go, see it went straight to Q5 and it delivered that information into there. If you're ever having issues with timecode, a lot of the show files that I've seen, just by having a look at these timestamps, you can see and potentially fix any problems. I'm going to pause and reset my timer just so that I can talk about that a little bit more. Now you can see that from Q5 I've got a timestamp of 5 seconds, but Q1 has got a timestamp of 26 seconds. So Q5 is actually going to fire before Q1. Timecode doesn't mind about what order these queues are in, it just matters about what timestamp is in those queues. I'm going to release and refire this queue list just so that I know it's starting from absolute scratch, and you can see this potential problem that you guys might come up against. My timer is still enabled on the console. I'm going to press play, and as soon as this timecode reaches 5.108 seconds, it's going to fire that queue. It's then going to work its way through the rest of the queue list before it fires these first couple of queues. Even on the fly, you can select one or a number of these cells, and you can add, subtract, or offset any of these timecode pieces of information. Can be useful, can be necessary. You can see that now, after it's gone through the entire queue list, it's then gone back to queues 1, 2, 3 and 4. If anyone's got any questions, then do let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to keep this webinar nice and short, and hopefully you guys can carry on working with recording timecode in the future. Just remember that from your normal program menu, if that timer is disabled, then your console will not listen to timecode information. If it's enabled, then you're in a good, happy place. Make sure your queue lists are connected. If your queue lists aren't connected to a particular timecode, then they will not by default listen to that particular section of timecode. Any last questions just before I wrap it up? Are there some types of options affecting the quality of timecode signal coming in? Good question. Yeah. Depending on what timecode source you're using, they run at different frames per second. The lowest that I've seen is about 40 frames per second, and the highest that I've seen is north of 100 frames per second. Such as a way to boost signal if it's weak. I don't personally know that, but I will try and figure it out. If anyone else who's watching knows it, then feel free to reply to Steve's comment. I'm sure he won't mind. MIDI I've seen work reliably over 5 or 6 meters. I've seen somebody try and drag it over 15 meters before and it's failed miserably. SMPTE I've seen work over much longer distances. So it may be a case, certainly, that some guys who are thinking of using timecode might have to look at what kind of timecode source they're using. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully somebody's going to comment on this video and help you out. If not, I shall be in touch in due course with a possible helpful answer for you. If no one's got any more questions, then I shall leave you guys to it. This video will stay online so that you can watch it again and again and again to your heart's content. Anyway, this has been Gordon at Avolites. Enjoy.